Here we go. Beyond Jiu Jitsu podcast, episode number 56. I cut your intro off. It was my turn. I haven't done an intro for a while. Thanks for tuning in. My name's Adam Childs with Kieren Lefebvre. Today we are talking about the IBJJF time requirements for belt promotion, and let's get rid of them. Or should we get rid of them?
Ooh. Dun, dun, dun.
Kieren, I've got a surprise. It's a black belt.
Yay.
Yeah.
Wait, really?
So quite recently, Andrew Wiltz from Daisy Fresh, I don't know if the video was recent or not.
Oh, it's recent.
Yeah. Well, the article at least I saw was recent. Him saying that the minimum time requirements for belts should be abolished, and he's been screwed over by it in the past. If you don't know, IBJJF is kind of the de facto governing body for jiu-jitsu. And we had an episode in the past I spoke about, I think it was when we were talking about gi versus no gi, and that the sport kind of doesn't have an overruling authority. But, IBJJF has kind of been the de facto one, and they have minimum time requirements for your belts, which there is no minimum time requirement at white belt. I believe previously it was 1 year, but it was not that long ago.
From white to blue, you're saying?
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. It wasn't that long ago that I checked that and saw there was no minimum time requirement.
Yeah.
But blue belt is a minimum of 2 years. Purple belt is 1.5. Brown is 1. All right. Minimum time you have to be at that belt before you're eligible for the next belt. This is for adults, mind you. Kids are different. And juvenile is different.
There's an age restriction on belts.
Age restriction as well.
So it's 16 to blue and purple, I believe. You need to be at least 16 to get a purple belt, I think.
Yep.
And then brown up is 18.
Yeah, but the thing that's specific about it, a distinction that needs to be made in case you're unaware of this, is it's not directly correlated with your birth date, it's with your birth year. So if it's say, you have to be 16. Wait, I believe it's 15 for a blue belt. Hang on,
16. Man, we are showing our preparation for this.
No, I was prepared
because
I gave the blue belt to Ben, and I remember I checked this, but now you're making me doubt myself.
Good.
Why are you always
even a black belt? The only I think I Googled it a little while ago when I was looking up the minimum time requirement from white to blue. Like the minimum.
You're already looking at blue to purple, aren't you?
No. I'm just enjoying my time at blue, which brings me into a little side topic that I had to bring up at some point during this episode. Is we've received more comments on YouTube this time complaining. We've had our first.
No, we have no.
Yes, we have.
I don't even want to hear it.
I can show you these complaints complaining that the artwork, the Beyond Jiu Jitsu podcast artwork, is incorrect. It's a stain on the industry. It's a lie. We are out there selling false information because I'm no longer a white belt. So a petition has officially begun, and I'm not even driving this. This is
I've already finished the artwork. Why don't you tell the people about the rashi, Kieren? And that's well then let's. Hang on, we can leverage it. Hang on, tell them about the rashes and say if you want to get the last version of the rash guard where I'm wearing a white belt.
This is limited edition white belt.
Tell them about the rash.
So if you would like a Beyond Jiu Jitsu rash guard, you can do so via two means. We have a competition time. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, this is the most disjointed introduction we've ever had. If you want to win a Beyond Jiu Jitsu rash guard, a Beyond Jiu Jitsu podcast rash guard, you can do so via the following method. You need to be following us on Instagram. That's a given. We will be checking. And you need to leave us a review on your streaming platform of choice and follow us on that streaming platform. So just follow us on the whatever streaming platform you use and leave us a review. And that gives you 1 entry. If you want 10 entries into the competition, then become a Patreon. And for our Patreons out there who are already signed up, you will, of course, be automatically receiving 10 entries into the competition.
And if all that you've decided to put it into the too hard basket, you can just buy a rash guard.
You can just buy one.
Check it out. It's on our Instagram. Looks dope.
It is very dope. And I do need to mention, I failed to mention this last episode, but it is on the Instagram post, that entries will be closing on the 31st of January, 2022, in case you're listening from the future. And yeah, and the winner will be announced on the 1st of February, 2022. So get your entries in quickly because it's closing very shortly. It's closing Monday next week.
Yeah. And then, for the winner, guys, it's not like we're just going to send you like whatever rash guard we've got. We'll make sure we'll send you the size chart. So you make sure you get your correct size. And,
they're made to order, people. So you will be getting one exclusively made to order to fit your body type.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, that was perfect. It gave me enough time to
yeah, tell us, what have you found out?
So yeah, it's 16 years for blue belt.
Oh.
16 for purple, 18 years for brown, 19 for black. But yeah, the important distinction is it's not your birth date, it's your birth year. So if your birthday is in December of this year, right? And you're a green belt because you're a kid still or a teenager, and you don't turn 16 till December, you're already like, you would be default a blue belt. Like if you tried to register for a competition today, being January, if you tried to register for a competition, it wouldn't let you register at green belt because it's the year you turn 16. So you're already not in that age bracket anymore.
Right. So even if you hadn't received your blue
you
belt,
should default receive it, right? Like with kids, they never go back, right? Like you don't have a kid who's a yellow belt and then they turn 16 and you go, you're now an adult white belt. Like you never know. Like they would just become a blue belt. It's up to you as the instructor to make sure that transition happens seamlessly. And what I mean by that is, let's say I had a 15-year-old and we're heading into the following year. So I know that next year they're turning 16, right? I might already be like, oh man, if I give this kid a gray and white belt, which is the one right after white for kids, if I give this kid a gray and white belt in November, he's not really going to be ready to automatically become a blue belt in January.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I might just go, I'm not going to grade him. I'm going to leave him as a 4-stripe white belt. So he heads into the following year still as a white belt, but he's then at least an adult white belt. And then I'll give him the blue belt at an appropriate point in time.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So you never want to demote them back to white belt. That's the instructor's job, right? So yeah. But yeah, it's the year, and it's the same for masters, right? So Masters 1 starts at 30, is 30 to 35. So it's the year you turn 30. So you can be competing at Masters when you're 29, right? So same as when you go from Masters 1 to Masters 2, it's the year you turn that age, right? So yeah, there's age requirements and time requirements.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I think
before, sorry, I just moving off from the age requirements, that's not what we're addressing today. Or maybe we'll address it, but I don't think there's a conversation to be had there.
No.
It'd be hard to argue that they should remove the age requirements. Yeah, because everyone wants to see a 22-year-old fight a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, no. Of course, you're always going to have prodigies who come along like Kolabate and even the Hudalo brothers who at 15, 16 were smashing, 30-year-old adults. Like, yeah, but they're like 1 in a million sort of.
Yes.
You don't abolish a whole system based on these few freaks of nature in a good way, freak of nature. I mean.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I think that comes back to, the whole argument that is being posed. And this is one thing that I really, in this episode, I want to unpack and get your opinion on. I think most of this argument is that these time requirements punish the exceptions. But should you change an entire system based on the exceptional or like the 1 in a million sort of people? And is it worth having loophole and exceptions in there that may be abused for these 1 in a million? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, firstly, I don't believe that the minimum time requirement should be abolished, because it's kind of like jiu-jitsu gyms that structure their business around competitors who are like 3% of their students and don't pay any membership or whatever, like you're just, setting yourself up for failure. To abolish your time requirements that work for the masses and like punish those few individuals just doesn't make sense. And there's probably some people arguing, oh, but jiu-jitsu isn't for the masses, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, even successful competitors, but maybe not the 1 in a million ones, even successful competitors, like, okay, we're a future guest on the podcast. One of Australia's very own internet trolls, Varun, who is a beast of a blue belt. He's Australia's newest world champion, having won the 2021 Worlds at blue belt. Man, Varun's been a blue belt for like fucking ever, bro. It's not like Varun is like, oh, well, I won Worlds after 6 months of being a blue belt, but I got to stay a blue belt for another 18 months. So my point being is even very high level successful competitors kind of need that time. It is very few people who are going to be, oh, I've been a blue belt for 6 months and I could already win Worlds at brown belt. Maybe there's one or two. Again,
if they came from like D1 wrestling or like catch wrestling or something.
So to change the rules for that, to cater to those people makes no sense. Like then what is it? Then you just may as well not have belts at all.
I think,
if you take belts out altogether, it's then a very vast, deep, overwhelming pool of people that, as a new person trying to get into the sport, to think that you're going, like, you look at people who are super competitive and don't get nervous and stuff like that. They still, if I said to you as someone who's a new blue belt and likes to compete and you've got that in you, if I just said, oh, you sign up to this, you could get a 2-month-old white belt, but you could also get a guy who's been a black belt for 8 years.
I don't know. I'm pretty confident against babies.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Get rid of the age requirements as well.
Well, they're 2 months old.
Yeah. Did I say, what did I say?
I'm being an idiot. You said 2-month-old white belt. So I was implying that it's
a baby.
It's not funny if I have to explain it.
But you know what I mean? You would even be like, well, fuck, like that doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
And again, there's probably a few exceptions who would froth at that, be like, yeah, man, like I just want to bring on everyone.
Yeah, but I mean, there's competitions set up for that, like ADCC trials, no belt requirement. Like there you go. You go in a big pool of, whoever, you could most likely you're going to get brown and black belts. Like that's the nature of the competition. There are competitions out there that have absolute divisions with no belt requirements, just open brackets, or
there's even competitions that have they ask whether you're beginner, intermediate, or advanced.
I'm competing on one on Saturday.
Yeah, so it'll say like, if you've been training for X amount of years, you're considered this, right? Now, of course, there's some level of honesty that has to go into that, because these competitions don't have some mega database where they can prove that you've been, unless you have been competing with that organization for multiple years.
Or like your smooth comp information. They could probably get that.
But how much they look at it, I have no idea. But maybe it would be nice to have, I don't have the answer, but maybe it would be nice if there was some way to facilitate those people who are exceptions to the rule.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but if you say, for example, you have been you're 18, so you're an adult, you've been a blue belt for under the minimum time requirement, say 6 months, and you win adult worlds at blue belt, like Varun did. I'm pretty sure there is a clause in the IBJJF rule set that if you win worlds, you can then be eligible for promotion. That's why sometimes people get promoted on the podium. I think I read that somewhere, but I could be wrong. Maybe
I'm not going to try to find that now. I'm not going to try to Google that, nor am I going to read the 200
If that's
page.
the case,
I don't believe that's the case, because one of the things that in Andrew Wilt's thing he was talking about,
he
was
won
that,
worlds, right? Or
and like apparently that like Heath, like the guy from Daisy Fresh, the owner, was even like going to the IBJJF asking
to promote him.
He could be promoted because he's just like demolishing everyone, and he's because Andrew Wiltz was even like, it's not like I just won 1 or 2 comps, like he's like, I won everything, so
he's so entertaining to watch compete as well.
He's a super entertaining
fighter. If you haven't seen him, like just Google his YouTube channel. He's got some comps recent ones as well, like the first of 2022 on his YouTube channel. And man,
he's so entertaining to watch, man.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, anyone who always goes after it. It's like why the Hoodalo brothers are so exciting to watch, bro. Like they are non-stop. I almost feel like rolling with them would be like I just came out of 1 week of isolation due to
you had the Rona.
I got the Rona. Yeah, it was pretty fun. No, it was fine. But I've got a 2.5-year-old locked in the house for a week. I feel like rolling with the Hoodalo brothers was like, sometimes I was in the house with him and I felt like I just need to grab him and be like, you just got to chill out, bro. You just got to chill. The Hoodalo brothers are just non-stop and that makes them super exciting. And Andrew Wills is similar in the sense that he's just so aggressive, like he attacks heaps of submissions and it's not just like, oh, I'm aggressive because I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, no, like
he's so
like,
technical.
Yeah, man, he's really entertaining to watch fight. Yeah. It's like, even though I'm not like the biggest fan of him, it's like not as in like I don't know him personally, but I mean not the biggest fan of him as a competitor. It's like Hulk, like Lucas Barbosa is again someone who just constantly attacks. Leandro Lowe constantly attacks. Merigali, anyone who's constantly just really, it's in their DNA, that whole
never stall.
The best defense is a good offense sort of thing.
Gritty, just fucking scrapping.
So
what
good.
does Joey say? Just scrap. Just get amongst the scrap.
I don't mind scrapbooking every now and again.
Yeah. Maybe one day you can present your scrapbook for the.
I will. I'll put it on the podcast.
This is a picture of my doggy.
Oh my God. Yeah. So, but it would be interesting that, what you said that you were saying, I believe there is a clause. I don't know if there is.
Perhaps there's not.
Yeah.
Probably making shit up.
Maybe there is. I don't know. But yeah. You're like, I heard that Joe Rogan said. So I don't know. Let's just say there's not for now because I don't think there is. But maybe there is. But maybe there's not. Maybe there is. I don't know. Maybe it would be nice if there were exceptions. Like I kind of think about it like, let's say school, or maybe let's not say school because that also has age requirements. Let's say university, okay? Because, you could be studying, engineering and be mid-20s and you could have a 40-year-old in the exact same course, right? Like it's just adults. Like they have minimum time requirements and some, geniuses will come along who could like learn everything, or they could pass that 3rd year engineering exam in their 1st year because they're just like pretty much a savant, and, in the education system, it's not unheard of for, you do hear it with kid prodigies, but I was just trying to remove kids for the age reason. But you do hear about people being like bumped up years in the education system, or people getting degrees in 2 years instead of 4 years. Yeah. So, but it's not like it's just like we've just abolished the time requirements. It's no longer 4 years to get your, to become a doctor. It's just pass the exam, So I don't think it should be abolished, but it would be interesting if IBJJF had some, I don't know what it would look like, but it would be interesting if they had some sort of, maybe even just as simple as you said, like, if
you win the worlds,
if you win the worlds, then you are eligible to be promoted.
Or even podium at worlds. You're eligible.
Man, the sport's getting so, I say this, it's never going to be untrue, but it's just getting better and better and better and more competitive. Like even a blue belt who wins bronze at the worlds is an absolute beast.
Yeah.
The level of these guys, man, if I have a competitive 18-year-old walk into my gym, I'm like, God damn. Like, I'm not gonna fucking roll with this dude, man. Like, they're just out of control. Like, the level is just so high now. Yeah. Even podium at Worlds could potentially be a thing to be eligible for promotion. Because then at least you're by default enforcing a minimum 1 year time requirement on the belt.
Just to be clear, with your belt requirements, this is only to be recognized by IBJJF. Like you could fucking walk into a McDojo tomorrow and get given an Amazon purple belt and you're rocking around with a purple belt, you know? And maybe you are a purple belt in that gym, but under the IBJJF, you're not.
Yeah, and that's a bit of a, you know, when kind of beating a dead horse, mentioned this a lot of times, IBJJF is the de facto governing body. It is just to be recognized by them. So unfortunately, there is no international body that like has the final word like there is in judo. Judo needs that because they're in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Okay. But jiu-jitsu isn't. It doesn't have that. So the example I always give is there would be guys from the no, doesn't exist anymore, but from the Danaher Death Squad, let's say, for example, because they're still a name that people know exists, that would be black belts, but IBJJF probably doesn't even consider them a blue belt because they never registered with the organization.
They don't have their paperwork in order.
You know, but like another one was Roberto Jimenez, right? Who is an absolute weapon. Him and I got my black belt and he got his brown belt at the same sort of seminar thing, right? But when he got his brown belt, he hadn't been a purple belt for long enough. He hadn't done that 1.5 years at purple belt. So he got his brown belt. He just wasn't allowed to compete in IBJJF competitions for another 6 months or whatever it was. But he still went off and did other competitions as a brown belt that weren't IBJJF competitions. You know, so it is just an organization. If you get that blue, purple belt or whatever from, as long as your instructor's credible, as far as I'm concerned, you are a blue belt or a purple, brown or black belt.
Yeah.
Whether you are recognized by the IBJJF and whether you even care to be recognized by them, well, that's up to you.
Yeah. No, I think there's a really important distinction. I think just to play the other side of this argument for a bit, a benefit in, well, no, it's kind of like the same side, but benefit to having.
But I want to see the same side, Kieren. Tell me more.
A benefit to having these time requirements is simply to prevent jiu-jitsu from falling into that whole McDojo bullshit. Like in karate, how you learn some kata. We always shit on karate, so sorry for anyone that likes karate. But you learn some katas and you're a 16-year-old black belt.
Block.
Yeah, upper block. Yeah.
Lower block.
Wax on, wax off. And you get a black belt in like 3 years or whatever. And, you know, you're a 16-year-old black belt and you know some black belt katas. That's about my perception of McDojo karate, right? To prevent jiu-jitsu from falling deeper down that hole, I think that IBJJF time requirements are important, not so much to be like rules that you must obey, but to be guidelines that people in the community can look to as guidelines, right? So if you get someone that tries to do a BJ pen and go from like white to black, you know, BJ pen is, you know, not even 1 in a million, like 1 in 100 million, right? There's not many BJ pens rocking around that could do that. So it's to sort of prevent jiu-jitsu from turning into just a fucking, you know, join my gym, give me 10 grand and I'll give you a brown belt. You know what I mean?
Actually, like I hate when you see that, those, you know, you can join karate gyms and you pay some absurd amount of money up front and it's like fast tracks you to black belt or something. And you're like, well, it's like a fucking scam, bro.
Yeah, it is a scam.
But, you know, some people are happy to throw money away.
They just want to be box stickers. You know what I mean? It's kind of like climbing Mount Everest when, you know, you're
actually not a climber.
Yeah, and you're guided up there by a Sherpa because you paid 100 grand and they carry everything and literally carry you up to the top and carry you back down.
Have you seen the queues at the top of Mount Everest?
Yeah, I recently went down a YouTube rabbit hole where I spent like a week just watching all the mountaineering videos I could, and I saw shitloads of Everest documentaries. And man, you don't even need to be a good climber. Like there was one chick,
like not at all.
There was this one chick.
I'm not saying it would be easy, but like I think it's more just the lack of sleep and the lack of oxygen that is the limiting. Fatigued. And it's the 100%. Limiting factor.
The Sherpas do everything for you. They lay down all the ropes. They fucking put down all the ladders. They carry all your oxygen. There was one chick who was super rich. She was like the wife of the guy that owns MTV, and she paid for Sherpas to carry her espresso machine up to the top. Like with her, like to some of the base camps, so she could have her espresso fucking machine coffee, like at Camp 3 or whatever, which is pretty fucking high up.
Yeah.
You know, it's climbing Mount Everest these days. If you're doing it with all the assistance of like, you know, the Sherpas at to the level that they have these days, it's come on. It's a box ticking exercise.
And a lot of like
Same as karate.
The Sherpas don't really like it either because they, the more people on the mountain, the more dangerous it is.
Just the longer you're up there. Yeah.
So there's some, I didn't previously go down a rabbit hole, but I just know more shit than you. So, but I've watched, some climbing documentaries just in the past. And I remember I watched one not a huge amount of time ago, and there's some sort of Sherpa expedition companies. Because, if you're going to climb Mount Everest, you go through a Sherpa company or I don't know, or a climbing guide company.
Yeah.
And there's some that will only take clients who have like meet certain criteria. In other words, they don't just take random, like if you're not a climber,
like a middle-aged white woman from fucking Los Angeles.
who the last thing, the last thing you did was a 5K jog.
Yeah.
Like they won't
and stopped and walked.
like they won't take you. In other words, like you need to be a climber for this more sort of like legitimate, you could say, climbing guide group, because they're not interested in flooding Mount Everest with people who aren't climbers. Like it's a mountain to be climbed by climbers, right? And I think if you know any minimal amount of climbing, anything about climbing, you know that climbers say, well, the real mountain is K2.
K2 is so awesome.
Like that's the one that the legitimate climbers do.
Yeah.
There's people who have climbed K2 who haven't climbed Everest because they're like, well, why would I climb Everest? It's just a tourist attraction.
If you legitimately climb K2, you get like some sort of recognition in the climbing community.
Do you?
Yeah, I forget what they call it, but you get inducted into like some like exclusive club because only like 360 odd people have actually summited K2.
Yeah,
and the death rate is just over 30%.
Right.
So nearly a third of everyone that attempts to climb K2 dies.
Yeah. And I think it's because for two reasons. One, it's just it's already more difficult than Everest.
Yeah.
But it's also because not as many people climb it, it has less infrastructure in terms of that Everest, like the Sherpas every year go out and, when it's climbing season, which is, summer, I guess, because you can't, in winter it'd be death trap.
Yeah.
Like they put out all the ladders across the ice fall and all that sort of shit and the ropes and everything.
You can get Sherpas for K2, but like they're the elite Sherpas and they can only do so much for you.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I have another, I don't know, speaking of climbing and stuff, another little tidbit for you is, base jumping.
Yes.
Did you know that like base is a acronym?
No, it isn't.
So base stands for building, antenna, like the things you jump off a building, an antenna, span, as in a bridge, and earth.
Oh, cool.
Right? And if you want to go the route of being certified, once you've done your 4 base jumps, one off a building, an antenna, a span, and an earth, you get a base number. So you'll be like, I'm base number 3082.
Wow.
If you want to be certified.
Have you base jumped?
No, but I've got a photo actually when I was in New Zealand on holidays that looks like if you, I don't have a parachute on, but I'll show it to you one day.
A one-time off base jump?
Kind of. It looks like it was just like this little rock and I just like jumped off it. But the way it's looked, if you were super ignorant about what a parachute backpack should look like,
looks like you're base jumping.
You could definitely be like, oh, that's me base jumping.
Oh, sick.
And I'll show it to you one day. You could fool people with it. I think it's on my Facebook. I'll show you.
Oh, that was a weird tangent. Anyway, time requirements, belts.
Yeah.
Beyond jiu-jitsu, guys. Beyond.
Beyond.
Everything and beyond.
Yeah, so I don't know. It would be interesting if they did add some sort of exception rule, but I don't see it happening because before there's so much that would have to change for that to even be a thing. I believe there should be some big international governing body. Someone needs to have the final word. I've mentioned this before because without that, where do you draw the line? It then just does become this big, massive mess. If you look at every single credible, legitimate sport that is not niche, right? Like, and jiu-jitsu is niche, but it's becoming less and less niche. Like it's just growing and growing and growing, right?
Yeah.
Like if you look at any big legitimate sport, there may be variations of it, but there is one main governing body that like dictates what the rules are and what can go and what can't go, and jiu-jitsu doesn't have that. So even without that, how can you make exceptions for a system that isn't like overruled by anyone?
Yeah. Whereas effectively when you're talking about belt requirements, minimum time, this is just in order to compete at IBJJF competitions.
That's right.
That's all it is. That's all we're talking about. It's not actually your belt requirement in order to be promoted. It's not something that your instructor needs to adhere to. It's simply if you want to compete at IBJJF comps, which is effectively Road to Worlds, outside of like their big Worlds event, do they hold like smaller events to qualify?
IBJJF.
Yeah. How many events do they do per year?
It depends which part of the world you're in. I'm not super switched on as to what it's like in Europe, but in Australia, there's like fucking none.
Yeah.
Right? There's a couple a year. The US, there's heaps. So all the like your 3 biggest competitions of the year, or let's say 4, because let's include Brazil, because there's quite a lot. Actually, not even that many that compared to America, not many that happen in Brazil. But in Brazil, you have the biggest competition of the year is the Brasileiro, which is essentially the nationals, right? So that's an IB. It's actually run by the CBJJF, but that's like a conglomerate. It's like the Brazilian version of the IBJJF. It's under the IBJJF,
right?
So it's part of it.
Right.
Like when you live in Brazil, when you do, it might have changed now because it's been, it's 7 years or whatever since I lived in Brazil. But at the time I was living in Brazil, when I didn't have an IBJJF membership. I had a CBJJ membership, which was an IBJJF membership.
Right.
Anyway, so you've got the Brazilian Nationals, you got the São Paulo Open. Actually, they have quite a few. You got the Rio Open. So all these opens, they're IBJJF competitions. So, but the 3 big or the 4 big competitions of the year, you got the Brazilian Nationals, you got the Pan Ams, you've got the Europeans and the Worlds. Right. But you can almost write off the Brazilian Nationals because for internationally, those are the 3 biggest ones. Right. At black belt, you need to accumulate points to qualify to fight Worlds at black belt. You didn't used to, but with the growth of the sport, they needed to start limiting the numbers a little bit. How do you accumulate those points? By depending how you place at other IBJJF competitions. So the US is littered with them, so you've got like whatever, like the New York Open, the Florida Open, or maybe not, I don't know, the Miami Open, Los Angeles.
Every state has
every state or city or whatever has a whatever open, and they're all IBJJF competitions, so it's probably more relevant in the US about whether you want to be recognized to compete under IBJJF. Little less so here in Australia, for example. We haven't had an IBJJF competition since COVID, but pre-COVID, I think there was 3 a year: the Sydney Open, the Melbourne Open, and the Pan Pacs.
I was about to ask if Pan Pacs was IBJJF. Yeah. I assumed that it was.
Pan Pacs is the only one that people do because it's just sort of got a name about it.
Yeah.
But most of them, like, if you registered to do the Sydney Open, sometimes you don't even have anyone to fight. Why? Because IBJJF isn't a powerhouse over here and they deal in US dollars. So you've just got your average competitor who's going, well, if I just go to do, let's say, the Sydney Cup, which is run by a local Australian federation, they're like, oh, my registration fee is 50 Australian dollars. If I want to do the Sydney Open, the IBJJF, it's like 120 US dollars. So we're pushing close to 200 Australian dollars.
And what do I get out of it?
Yeah. And so people don't do it because it's too expensive just for our currency. And so people are like, oh, I'm not going to pay $200 to have one opponent or no opponents.
So what, you're paying $200 to rock up, maybe like compete once if they show up and everyone makes weight.
Get a medal.
Get tapped and then get silver and go home crying.
Or celebrating.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, it's definitely more relevant in the US. Like I said, I don't know what the scene is in Europe.
Where is Pan Pacs in Melbourne?
Yes.
Okay, because that's the one I had my eye on competing at next year at Blue Belt.
Next year or this year?
Next year.
Next year? Why not this year?
So I was going to...
It's fucking January, bro.
Is it? I thought it was early in the year.
Oh, well, I don't know. Let's find out. I don't even know. Well, I don't know. I don't even know if IBJJ. So, yeah, we haven't had any
since COVID.
Since COVID, because most people know by now that Australia has quite strict rules for international arrivals.
Yeah.
So they haven't had any, like, the IBJJF, I think their sort of main base of somewhere in the US anyway, is their main base of operations. So,
well, the biggest competition that's going to hit Australia is in March of 2022, in case you're listening from the future, and it's ADCC trials. So,
yes.
And that's not even fucking IBJJF. I don't think ADCC even care if you're they don't care if you're IBJJF registered. They're a
don't.
competitor organization. So, I mean, and arguably a more more popular organization for no gi exclusively, obviously. So yeah,
bro, I'm looking on their IBJJF calendar.
Yeah, there's
for
nothing.
competitions, and I'm already down to July,
There's nothing.
and I haven't seen anything in Australia.
Okay, well maybe I will compete in Pampax. It's in Melbourne though, yeah.
Yeah, it's always unless they change it.
Yeah.
So I can't. I mean, there's nothing so far.
Yeah. Well, toward the end of the year, I'll compete. But as just a bit of an aside for my my competition schedule, my plan anyway, I was planning on doing all the local circuits this year, not really traveling too much unless there's unless I'm doing really well or whatever. Just doing everything I can within like a 2 to 3 hour radius of drive of where I am now, and then next year look to do like Pampax, look to do there's something in fucking Japan. I'll like look to do that.
Something a bit more international.
Yeah, basically use this year to get as much blue belt experience under my belt, and then look to push to win something next year.
Yeah, because it's
That's the
been
plan.
last year there was like pretty much no competitions. Well, the last 2 years we've had almost no competitions. I think in the last 2 years in Australia we've had maybe like 3 or something.
Do you think
like,
that's
or at least in New South Wales, I should say. It was a
Yeah.
bit different because of the states locked other states out with
Yeah.
COVID and everything. But yeah,
Do you think that because Australia and well, even internationally, people have been so locked down that some serious jiu-jitsu competitors out there, the ones that are, in a similar position to me, like, I want to win something at blue belt before I get promoted. Do you think they're sort of sandbagging for a bit? So do you think now this year you're going to see like some pretty heavy competition that would have previously perhaps been promoted out?
I don't know. It's a good question. I haven't thought about it. Maybe.
I could be overthinking it, but
yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think in, Australia, for Australia, any of the really like I am living, breathing jiu-jitsu, like they probably went and traveled internationally anyway, because there wasn't much going on here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, Levi's off in the States and, so I think the big Australian competitors who are wanting to make a career out of the competitive side of jiu-jitsu, they bit the bullet and traveled.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Because they just didn't have anything to do here in Australia. There weren't even local competitions, which aren't on the level of international competitions, even when they are running.
Yeah.
But they didn't even have them as an option to sort of like
Practice.
to practice and keep the wheels greased.
Yeah, that makes sense. But in terms of competitions in the Australian scene, like I said, I think the biggest thing coming up is ADCC trials. And I think it's going to be freaking epic.
Yeah, it should be cool.
Are you going?
Where is it?
I think it's March 6th, around there. I got it on my calendar.
Where is it?
It is Castle Hill.
Oh, it's so far away.
Yeah, I think it's up in Castle Hill. That's just
I don't know. I haven't
look it
really
up.
looked at whether they're
It's in Sydney,
allowing
people.
spectators.
They
or
are
anything.
$35 per ticket. You got to book on Smooth Comp.
What? Fuck that.
Well, it's a pre-book on Smooth Comp. I'm pretty sure though you'll be able to pay.
I don't have any students competing in it. I don't think so.
Nah, neither do I. No, I have a nutrition client that is competing.
Do you?
Yeah, I'm dieting him down for this comp. So I'm
Who
going
is
to go.
it? Tell me.
No, I'm not telling you.
Tell me.
You don't know him. I'm going to go film him.
But I want to know him.
I can arrange that. I'll introduce you. I'll set up a meeting.
I'll be like,
And
hi, I'm Adam. I'm a huge fan. You're one of Kieren's clients.
yeah, so I'm going to go film him. And my friend Jeremy Skinner is definitely going to take out 66 division. So
He is. He's also fighting on Subversion
He
February
is.
12th.
yes.
Which, I mean, unfortunately, I pulled out of that card. I was supposed to be fighting, but, if people have listened to the last few episodes, you would know I had 2 surgeries back in December.
Yeah.
So only like less than 2 months ago, I had 2
Unable to train. So
separate surgeries, and they're starting to come pretty good now. But I mean, I'm still not I don't know. I've maybe with lockdown in the last 6 months, I think I've maybe rolled like 5 times or something.
And 3 of them have been with me.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. So I pulled out a subversion, unfortunately. But yeah, Jeremy's fighting Taliesin Swatis.
Yeah,
so that'd
be
cool.
Awesome. That'll be a cool match. And then I think, I don't know if there's any gambling on 80cc trials. I hope so. So I'll put money on Jeremy.
What? Yeah,
safe bet.
Be interesting, actually. It should be when we had Jeremy on the podcast, he said that he's excited to finally fight someone closer to his weight. He usually always has to fight heavier dudes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it should be cool to see.
Either way.
But yeah, like you said, the time requirements for your belt, it's just relevant to IBJJF, So should it be abolished? No, I don't think so.
I don't think it really achieves anything. It only affects, the restrictions only affect like very, very few amount of people.
Super few. And yeah, you can get promoted. It's not stopping you from being promoted. It's just stopping you from being promoted and competing with IBJJF.
Exactly. And if you,
have
to wait another 12 months.
But yeah, it would be interesting if they did something like, hey, if you win worlds, you're eligible for promotion, because then it's still going to it's not completely removing the time requirements, but it's taking a year off the blue belt minimum time and 6 months off the purple belt minimum time, and I think most people would be all right with thinking that, if you can win worlds every year in a row, like you should be fine
and you're the best in the world for your weight at that belt.
Yeah.
Like the argument could be made, promoted. If you win worlds at blue belt, you are the best blue belt in the world at that weight, so you should.
And other blue belts don't want to fight you again at blue belt the next year.
Doesn't make sense.
Imagine coming up against the guy who won blue belts world last year, and you'd be like, "Fuck off, get a purple belt already."
Yeah, exactly.
Bro. And you'd be like, "Oh, well, I'm not allowed."
Mate, you're a purple belt, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, enough of that, McDojo.
I'm thinking about changing our gym to a McDojo. You cool with that?
Yeah. How much per belt? What would you charge per belt?
Let's say blue belt. Well, I mean, if you just want the standard blue belt, $200. But if you want the fast track blue belt, it's got to be $400.
$400. That's cheap. I'll pay that.
And then it goes up. Purple belt's more expensive.
I'll take a fast track brown belt, please.
Fast track brown belt. All right, I'll draw up the contract.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. All right, Kieren, but you got to train at least twice. And I really want you to work on those hip escapes, and then that brown belt's yours.
Done. Epic. Well, on that note, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Beyond Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And just a reminder, please feel free to enter our competition to win a Beyond Jiu-Jitsu podcast rash guard exclusive run, very limited edition. To enter, you must be followed on Instagram. You have to follow us on Instagram. That's at Beyond Jiu-Jitsu _podcast, and leave us a review. That is how you enter, is be following Instagram and leave us a review on your streaming platform of choice. And if you want those bonus 10 entries, become a Patreon. That's how you get the exclusive 10 entries. Ooh,
yeah,
10.
That's 10 times as many as one.
You're guaranteed to win. Everyone that signs up is guaranteed. And just a quick shout out, please submit your questions for episode 60. We have a Q&A episode. It's coming very quickly, particularly with the way we record. So you need to get your questions in now to enter, submit a question, and to hear your voice on the Beyond Jiu-Jitsu podcast. You can find that in our link tree. It's the first link.
Audio question.
It's the first link in our link tree. Submit us a question and we'll answer it live on the show. And on that note,
good.
Thanks for listening, fam. And until next time, see ya.